Amidst the giant wins that Palworld has been having recently against Nintendo and their ongoing crusade to destroy any and all competition, it's now come to my attention that there are some people out here who are claiming that the power of the internet, of the ordinary voices in this space, are somehow weaponizing their unity of disdain against megacorporations being bullies and labeling that as a bad thing. I'm being serious, this is kind of crazy, but this comes from Games Radar Plus. Public outrage amidst Palworld lawsuits likely influence new scrutiny of Nintendo's Pokemon patent. IP expert speculates, but it's debatable if giving that power to people on the internet who scream loudly is good. You likely already know that Nintendo has been losing almost on every front when it comes to their Palworld lawsuit. They tried to use a patent for Pokeballs, that didn't work. They then tried to use a summoning mechanic, which thankfully recently got the ire of the entire American Patent Office, which is again a massive win because it was ridiculous. But now Games Radar interviewed a lawyer named Andrew Velzen, who's the whole thing about this video pretty much, who is also an intellectual property lawyer, someone who works with companies to ensure that their brands and such are kept under law so nobody can damage them. So this Andrew guy is a member of a law firm called MBHB, and Andrew Velzen believes that the American Patent Office standing up and demanding answers from Nintendo over their lawsuit to be uncharacteristic of what a patent office should be doing in the first place. He said this to Games Radar. Only about 1% are actually started by the director like this one was. It takes something quite monumental, I think, for the United States Patent Office director to themselves initiate the process. Well, that's a good thing, isn't it? That such a lawsuit was taken priority due to the ramifications that were surrounding it? Why would that be seen as a negative in any single way? But according to Andrew Velzen, it was anything but that. He would then say this. However, given the recency of the patent, in addition to the sheer amount of public discourse and other surrounding factors, with the Palworld and Pokemon litigation, which has certainly been an area where the public has actively been commenting on it, the IP expert suggests that it's likely the amount of discussion that's going on in the public at least flagged it for him, the United States Director of Patents, as something to consider. So again, isn't that a good thing? Isn't that what you would want to see to happen? That the public are telling you guys whose job it is to protect these IPs in the first place? And much more, there is clearly unlawful use of the justice system that is being leveraged to ruin competition in what should be considered a free market. I don't see how you could see this as a negative. The world is more connected than ever before via social media. This objectively means that if things go wrong like they have with Nintendo and Palworld, of course people are going to speak on it. But as you're seeing, this IP lawyer is not really believing that the public should have a say in how these sorts of things go down. In fact, we shouldn't really have any say at all according to them. As Games Radar puts it here, right now, it's not certain if the re-examination will lead to any of the patent's claims being altered, or potentially even revoked, but Velzen notes that it's interesting to consider whether this particular re-examination could be a harbinger of things to come in the future, or more of a one-off aberration from the Patent Office. Namely, could we see the public potentially influencing future action around other patents, and would that actually be a good thing? I would wager that it does. Because let's be real, I don't want to dissuade or claim that the people who work in patent IP law are somehow inept at their jobs. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am going to say is that it is never a bad thing to have people seek out information that is technically also a boon to your work and could, in theory, let's be real, make your job infinitely easier. For example, I go on Twitter often. I also see things that I bookmark quite regularly that people discover about this game or that game. Objectively speaking, the existence of Twitter as a platform as it is right now is a boon, obviously, to someone who makes content like me, because in a way the actual content I cover can usually be filtered and also found by the means of thousands if not millions of people daily, which obviously that is a far more effective way of discovering things than say one person doing it themselves. I wouldn't claim that content creation would be easier because it wouldn't be the truth. The same way with this Velzen IP lawyer guy. I think trying to push the idea that maybe the public shouldn't have as much sway when it comes to legal battles is honestly bogus. Because while true that the immediate entities at the heart of this sort of controversy is Nintendo and Pocket Pair, but let's also make something else very clear too, which is that the decision of whether this lawsuit is going to go in Nintendo's favor or not will not just have effects on Pocket Pair either. It will absolutely affect the outcome and the livelihoods of other companies if Nintendo is able to crush their enemies here by claiming that they somehow own any of these patent ideas. And by proxy, that loss of creative expression and market competition by allowing Nintendo to control with an iron grip would also then in turn make the future of what you and I can buy and play also get affected. So while I understand where this lawyer is coming from in a sense, they believe that the law should be dictated by only those that are sworn in to protect and uphold it. But ultimately, this sort of story and situation does not begin, nor will it end with Nintendo or with Pocket Pair. I'll say it plainly, okay? Nintendo cannot win this if we want a bright future. They cannot be allowed to because the outcome of such a ruling would just be catastrophic, not just for Palworld, but the entire industry as a whole. If they can successfully convince courts worldwide that yes, they single-handedly own the rights to all of these game mechanics and more. Video games, they are cooked full stop. I guarantee you, if Nintendo were to win this, they wouldn't stop here. It would just embolden them to then continue their IP crusade on anything they believe threatens their claim to the digital throne, if you will. And then at that point, you have to ask yourself if what is being presented here and what's the true cost of this IP war is something the public, that's you and me obviously, are allowed to even have a say in it or how to influence it. I'm not saying that I'm gonna slip a crisp $20 bill to a juror on the case, but I think if your job is to protect the IPs and the legacy of these companies and ensure that no one runs a monopoly of greed or say corruption, and you're also being given all the information that you need on a digital plate by not just me, but thousands of people online, how can you believe that any of this is somehow wrong when it isn't? This is something I honestly dislike about current, well, everything really. That somehow, if you don't have this diploma or certificate, it suddenly means that you're just not allowed to speak on things. Like I'll have people who will say, well, you're not a journalist, as if a piece of paper will dictate whether I understand what it means or not when it comes to what I report on this channel. Look at all of the so-called journalists in the industry who do have their so-called diplomas. You're telling me that Kotaku is suddenly more valid than me or maybe Asmongold or anyone else just because they got a piece of paper alongside their hair dye from their liberal arts professor? No, it means nothing. It means even less today. You are all the media now, objectively so. If you have a phone with a camera, which is pretty much all of you, yeah, you are now the media. So that any lie told, any truth spoken, you have the ability to speak your voice, whether it's in comment sections, in video formats, or anything else. It does not invalidate your opinion, nor your ability to speak your mind on arbitrary numbers. Like just because I have subscribers on YouTube, that does not mean that my voice is somehow worth more than say someone who has like 100 subscribers or less, you know? Everyone is valid. It also doesn't mean that just because someone has more subscribers than me, for example, that their word is somehow now better either. IGN has millions of subscribers, and they white knight for the industry all of the time. It matters little, if at all, is what I'm saying. But I think with Palworld, I don't think what's happened would have happened without all of us honestly speaking our minds the way that we did. If we didn't speak up and say, hey, this stinks, we need to fix this, I mean, who knows? Maybe Pocket Pair would already be destroyed and gone by now, and that would be a terrible outcome for everyone besides Nintendo. But this idea that we're somehow not allowed to defend Palworld or any other game is honestly just stupid to me. But this IP lawyer would then say this: if the re-examination was indeed in response to public discourse and the vitriol against maybe what is perceived as inadequate patent examination or something, whether or not we see this more in the future is an interesting question, Velzen begins. If it turns out that enough commentators in the public decrying what they think is a patent that shouldn't have been issued, and they can sort of force the director's hand to look at more patents, I think there's an argument to be made whether or not that's a good thing. But again, Velzen, how is that not a good thing? Doesn't this just make your jobs easier in the long run? If the American Patent Office is being told by their citizens and international people that, hey, this patent is going to doom plenty of commercially viable products made in America, not to mention the rest of the world, then why, and especially how, could this be seen as anything but a net positive for you? It just makes your job easier. It also tells you from the public's viewpoint what they deem to be noble and just, which most of the time is a good way of judging whether what you're fighting for in the first place is even worth it or not. To claim that the public having more power is a bad thing just sounds like tyranny to me. And it also sounds kind of tone deaf too. It's not like anyone is saying that Nintendo has to be erased. No. But can we at least agree that no single company should have the power to simply point at another company they don't like and immediately say we want them gone at all costs or else? That's not how democracy works. And that's not how any of this has or will ever work in theory either. You can't really put that genie back in the bottle anymore. The public are going to speak on anything they want, and that's their right. But then Velzen says this: plenty of gamers are happy to take out their pitchforks and argue against things, especially, Redditors or what have you, he continues. And if that's something that can move the patent office to act, I think there are some ways in which I could see that being valuable. And certainly, it would feel like maybe that this is useful and kind of doing part of the patent office's job for them in calling out poor patents. Yes, exactly. There's nothing wrong with it. You can't claim that this is not a net positive. You're literally making my argument for me there, Velzen. Your job becomes easier. And you're also then able to spend less resources and taxpayer money in order to triangulate exactly what you and your other lawyer friends should then be dealing with by having the public, like you said, do your job for you. Look, I don't even like Reddit that much, but even I can admit that them existing is to some capacity also good for at least the same reasons as Twitter. Because you have thousands if not millions of users across all niches filtering, finding, and discovering any and all kinds of stories for you to pay attention to. It's like having self-automated Google searches constantly, but it's just actual users that are doing it instead. And then the public can also help in discovering faults in the logic of these companies too, which can also fast track it. This is nothing but a positive thing to have. I don't know why they're against this, but then Velzen would say this: he's not completely convinced that this would be entirely beneficial, though. On the other side of the coin, I don't think anyone would want to be in a regime where just because a handful of people on the internet scream loudly enough about something, it invalidates actual innovation and prevents people from pursuing things that are actually benefiting the gaming industry, Velzen suggests. So I think there's arguments to be had on both sides of that, and it'll be interesting to see if this plays out with more of these coming down in the future, or if this one is just a one-off case. But how is this in any way a bad thing? Claiming that only a handful of voices should have power is wrong. Like I said, everyone has a voice. Sure, if Asmongold speaks on something, people will become more aware of it. That's obvious, but isn't that still a good thing either way? I guess if he brings attention to something that you disagree with him bringing attention to, it doesn't mean that it's still not objectively a good thing to happen, because that's what healthy debate should look like. Even if someone I don't like on Twitter or something else says something, them being able to speak their minds more often than not is actually a good thing in the long run. Mostly because it allows people to then see how insane and stupid they are by their own words, which if you ask me is kind of awesome and kind of hilarious too. But claiming that the people watching this or anyone on the internet shouldn't be listened to or be taken seriously because, again, they're not wearing a suit 24/7 or have a piece of paper on nice, framed in their office or something is just crazy to me. Like, Asmongold's a guy in his room, yet he has more reach than entire companies. Look what happened last year. When players rallied up against the nonsense in games too, all the game groups, the unions, the QA testers, the CEOs, even with their fat checks, none of that could stand up to the ordinary player just saying, no, I'm not buying your propaganda. And I think that's what this is really about. It's about gaslighting the users and the viewers out here to convince them that they have less power than they actually do, when in actuality, you have so much power it's ridiculous. Because again, when you're united against something, whether it's Nintendo being morons or companies pushing slop, your words will always matter. Velzen would state more in another Games Radar article, because for some reason they split this interview into two separate articles, probably for ad revenue, but anyways, he states, whether or not it causes the director to initiate re-exams more often, I think is unlikely. Velzen begins. I don't think a director would say, well, this patentee had one questionable patent, so it's open season on their patents. I don't think that would happen. That's not to say that the re-examination going against Nintendo couldn't have any wider impact, though. After all, Velzen adds, third parties can file these re-exam requests, and there are other proceedings at the US Patent Office or in US District Court where you can seek to have patents invalidated. He continues, I think it could embolden some competitors a little bit more to say, well, if Nintendo was willing to go broad enough on this patent and it was invalidated, maybe they've done so on other cases, and so maybe we could have stronger arguments against the patents than we thought in the first place. Exactly, and that's the point. It took Velzen a bit to get there, but he got there eventually. The point here is not to just destroy Nintendo. That's not it. The point is that if Palworld wins this, it will likely stop other companies from them trying to push similar things on other companies. And that is by definition a good thing objectively, because companies should not be able to just push their will down on smaller studios simply because they don't like their games or see them as a potential threat. It's not fair, it's stupid, and it's wrong. This reminds me of the ongoing lawsuit against Sony and Tencent right now with Light of Motirum and the Horizon series. Here's Light of Motirum on screen here. As you can see, it looks a lot like Horizon Forbidden West and Zero Dawn. It has people in tribal-like gear fighting robot dinosaurs. Obviously, Sony is now suing Tencent over this. It was also revealed revealed that Tencent originally came to Sony with a pitch for a Horizon game in the past. But when Sony shot it down, Tencent, I guess, just took that idea that they had and then turned it into their own game, but under a new name. Either way, Light of Motirum is coming. Probably not to PlayStation because of, well, the lawsuit, but as GamesIndustry.biz reported as seen here just in October 2025, Sony is angry at Tencent claiming that Light of Motirum has done irreparable damage to the Horizon series by just existing already. The reason why I bring up Light of Motirum in a video about Palworld and Nintendo and Pokemon is to show you the difference between them. Whereas Palworld is its own thing like Temtem or others before it, Light of Motirum, according to Sony anyways, has actively worked to confuse players and make them believe that this Light of Motirum game is in fact also a Horizon game. As seen here from GamesIndustry.biz, in Sony's latest statement, Tencent went as far as to hire the composer of Horizon to actually make similar music for their Light of Motirum game, which is kind of insane to me that the composer of Horizon even agreed to that, honestly. But not only that, but Sony claims that Tencent ripped off their Aloy main character design and the themes and the looks and even the story of the Horizon series with Light of Motirum. And they also accused Tencent of deliberately using the connection to Horizon to promote the game and in a sense steal customers even. Again, I bring this up for a simple reason, because what Tencent has done here is a lot worse than what Palworld did objectively. Just let me explain. Palworld never tried to convince players that it was Pokemon. It didn't try to market itself by saying, hey, you're a trainer who collects badges and you use Pokeballs and you'll have a Pokedex and stuff. Palworld began as a survival game in a sense. More so like Ark than really say Pokemon. But in Tencent's case, again, allegedly, because this is what Sony is saying, not me of course, but still, that what Tencent is trying to do here is straight up mimic Horizon 1-to-1. Again, they literally hired the same composer and everything. That's really suspicious and frankly weird. As Sony stated here, they consider Light of Motirum to be a slavish clone of the Horizon series. Yet Tencent, in that same paragraph, claims that they are just using genre tropes that Sony do not own, because they, like Nintendo, cannot own the concept of, say, robot dinosaurs, or shooting said robots with arrows and whatever else, which Tencent is right, Sony can't legally own that. However, what they are doing, like Sony is claiming, is to market their game as a Horizon game on purpose, as in it's literally Horizon or Horizon adjacent. That is technically disingenuous. That is fair of them to say, although personally, I still don't think Sony will win in deleting Light of Motirum either way from the internet, because again, you can't really own the idea. Although Sony is claiming that Tencent is using the likeness of Horizon's main character Aloy within their own game, as you can see here, they're very, very mad about Tencent just using anything remotely resembling their game. Circling back though to Palworld, it's clear that these companies, whether it's Sony or Nintendo, they frankly just don't want competition at all. They don't want things to be challenged because ultimately they just want power over the ideas that they claim that they own in the first place. But there is no idea that anyone can't take and really make into their own if they tried. There's only specific IP concepts, like actual designs that can't be replicated. But I think what we're finding out, especially with China, is that they are willing to make anything and everything that can make them money pretty much at any cost. And it makes sense for Nintendo, since as seen here from the GameBusiness.com, Legend ZA was the weakest selling mainline Pokemon game since 2018. Although the number is still plenty high regardless, but with Palworld selling what it has and with Nintendo wanting it gone, it's still wild that these IP lawyers and journalists believe that the power to change things should not inherently be in the hands of the players at all. But if you ask me, if anything, the power should be in the players' hands more than ever. If we can change the way the industry can work, the sooner we can also hold these companies accountable too. And if you ask me, there's nothing wrong with that. The only people who would have issues with these things would be those who seek to hold all the power themselves. But if you ask me, at the end of the day, there's only one group whose voice matters in the end, which is like always the players. Because without you guys, there is no Nintendo, Sony, no Pokemon or Palworld. So keep your voices heard, don't stop talking, seek out ways to get yourselves heard all the time, because it's very important. Because just look at what you caused to happen with Nintendo and Pocket Pair. Even these IP lawyers are now getting spooked by your collective power. You ask me, there's something beautiful in that we need to ensure that Palworld is not ruined and that yes, Nintendo loses. Because even if you don't play these games, if for any other reason than to ensure that these giants don't gain even more insurmountable power in the future. But seeing that these lawyers are now panicking about the public's power growing, that's really interesting if you ask me. It means that we can change things, we can fix things, we just need to stay vocal and stay up to date with things, and that's kind of awesome, honestly. And that we're only as strong as we are as a community. If we can clearly cause Nintendo to get taken down a notch with global intervention, well, what else can we do? But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, subscribe, have a great day, guys.